Hello, and welcome to the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Engagement Committee meeting with the Township of Wilmot. My name is Dawn Middleholt. I'm the Municipal Clerk. And just for the purposes of this meeting, I'm going to be chairing until we have a committee chair election a little bit later in the meeting. So to start us off, I would like to ask Ms. Bond to read the territorial acknowledgement, please.
Sorry.
I'd asked you about reading the territorial acknowledgement.
I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of it.
Oh, it was in the email, but that's okay. Councillor Holman is an expert at the territorial acknowledgement. I will resend it out to all members of the committee so that they're prepared. Again, my apologies for the miscommunication then.
No worries, I can do that. No problem at all. I know it by heart, but I probably should read it just to make sure. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the settlers arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant, the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Wonderful, thank you, Councillor Holman. So at every meeting, we also ask if anyone has any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. If you do, we only have really one item of business. And so this would just be if anybody had a financial interest that would cause a conflict, if you could let us know. Okay, seeing none. So we're going to move into, and I'd like to welcome Ms. Lang to our meeting.
Sorry.
Oh, it's quite all right, quite all right. We all have lots going on for sure. So we're going to move right into an orientation session on the procedural bylaw. So if we could. So as the municipal clerk, this is a significant part of what I do. And I practiced doing the full screen mode. There we go. And now I share screen. And there we go. Hey. There. Okay, so everyone should be able to see my my slide deck here. And there. Okay, so procedural bylaw orientation. This is for township committees. If it was a member, if it was council, it would be a little bit different. But for the most part, things are the same whether you're with a committee or with council. There's just a few differences. Okay, so we're going to start with the Municipal Act, which certainly is a lot of fun for people who enjoy reading legalese, which kind of have to be if you're a clerk. So this is where everything begins. This is what gives municipalities the legal authority to do what we do. Essentially, that's what this document does. Unlike some other levels of government, we are permitted interexistence through legislation rather than constitution. And it provides, within that, it provides for a definition of a local board. And as you will see in the definition, it does include committees, body or local authority established for exercising any power under any act with respect to the affairs or purposes of one or more municipality, excluding school boards or conservation authority. So in general, committees of council are going to fall under this. Not so much, there's only a couple that are provided power under other acts, but it's about the affairs of the municipality and conducting business of the municipality. So within the Act, it's a very, very long document. Section 238 defines procedural bylaw. Every municipality and local board shall pass a procedural bylaw for governing the calling, place, and proceedings of a meeting. This section goes further into requiring the bylaw to provide public notice of the meetings, but then there are also some optional items as well. The Municipal Act 2001 is frequently referenced by the Act and certainly referenced by people in the clerk's role in the township and is certainly a key governance document for the township. There would be some debate. I say it's the key document. Others may feel different, but for me, it's the key one. So getting into the procedural bylaw itself. So we start off our procedural bylaw talking about meeting principles. The majority must be allowed to rule, which is when we talk about voting and whether or not it is the majority of the voting members approving something. But the minority has rights as well, which must be respected. Members have a right to information to make decisions, which is why we try and provide reports on everything that comes before a committee or before council. And you need to have that information in a timely fashion. Courtesy and respect are required. And what you'll notice here is it's not just courtesy and respect of the members, it's courtesy and respect in general. So that's any person who's involved in the meeting. Members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations, which means that everybody who's a member on the committee is treated equally. And members have a right to an efficient meeting. So that is a large part of the chair's role in making sure that things move along quickly and efficiently, and everyone's given the opportunity to speak who wishes to. So this is just a brief comment about decision-making process. So setting an agenda. So as a clerk, that's generally my role along with the chairperson. When we're talking about council, that's with the mayor, but also as I said, the chairperson for the committee. Information is gathered. You as members are going to form your opinions and then make a decision, and then the decision is implemented. So I'm actually going to, instead of starting at the beginning of the procedural bylaw, I'm going to go a little bit further in. So this is starting back near the end of the document, section 17, is where we talk about committees. So in general, it is the role of committees to make recommendations to council on matters which are in their jurisdictions, guide and request staff through the CAO to provide reports on the direction and nature of policy development, fact findings, analysis, and generation of possible alternatives required, and receive public delegations and receive mechanisms to receive further public input within their jurisdiction. So in two places, you'll notice it talks about the idea of jurisdiction. So there's two levels of jurisdiction to think about. First of all, jurisdiction of us as a municipality, but then also jurisdiction of a committee. And that's where the mandate comes into play and the terms of reference. And CAO Chambers is going to go over a mandate with the committee a little bit later on. General role of committee members, so all of you, to attend the committee meetings, being prepared to discuss items on the agenda in a respectful manner, and when called, vote on the matter with the public interest in mind, and to uphold the decision and actions of the committee. So attendance, obvious, what we're talking about there. So discussion in a respectful manner. So we are, all members are here to serve the public good, right? So that is, part of that is being respectful, trying to work together where possible. That doesn't mean there isn't debate. That doesn't mean there isn't disagreement. It just means that you do so in a respectful manner and that you're thinking about the greater public interest as opposed to personal interest or the interest of just a small group of people. But then once a decision is made, to continue and go out into the world, that this is the decision that was made, whether you agree with it or not. So procedures for committees. The procedures of the committee shall be the same as those set out for council insofar as they are applicable, with the following exceptions. So for committees, unlike in council, we do not do a recorded vote. You may request that it be noted that you were in opposition, but we don't do a recorded vote per se. At the request of any member of the committee present, any item on the agenda may be reopened by a majority vote of members present. That is slightly different than the council way of doing this. Yes, Kate.
I wasn't prepared to unmute myself. I apologize. I'll be better at that
Okay.
next time. So is this basically what you're saying is that, so when these things, when a vote gets recorded, sometimes it can be like, you know, so-and-so voted this way and so-and-so voted that way. And what you're saying is that at the committee level, that does not occur. It's just that there was 5 votes to 4 and you'll never know who voted which way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, obviously in the virtual world, things are recorded on YouTube, but
You'll be able to
we
see
do
me
not.
going like this or not doing that. Yeah, okay. Got it.
Very recently at council, we did have a recorded vote. I went ward by ward asking if they were in favor or in opposition. And then we recorded which way each member of council voted. So yeah, that's a recorded vote. A quorum of any committee is the majority of the members of the committee as appointed by council, and the mayor, if present, is a member to be included in determining the quorum. The mayor is what we call an ex officio member of every committee. So that person does have the option to attend and to vote if they wish. If any committee neglects to attend to its duties, council may intervene in order to meet and report. The chair of the committee may vote on any question before the committee. In this situation, I would not vote because I'm a member of staff, so I would never vote on any question before the committee. When there's a tie vote, that means that it is in the negative. So the motion or resolution has been defeated. And then any member may speak more than once on the same question. Should any member of a committee refuse or neglect to attend the regular or special meetings, the chair may report such neglect and refusal to council, who may remove such member from the committee and appoint another member. So all of you have been appointed to this committee by council, and it is only by a resolution of council that you would be no longer on the committee up until the new term has passed. Or sorry, the new term has begun. Advisory committee shall prepare minutes and submit them to council. That will be my job. So I'll prepare the minutes. The committee will approve the minutes or ask for amendments, edits, what have you. And then once they are approved, we take them to council. And council requires that all committees provide an annual information report to council to update on their activities. It just so happens the terms of reference for this committee asks for a little bit more frequent reporting to council, which we will get to in a little bit. So procedural bylaw, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the bylaw now. And okay, so rules and procedures. So for the procedural bylaw, the rules and procedures contained in the procedural bylaw will be observed at all proceedings. So in general, committees tend to be a little bit more informal. However, it is still necessary to adhere to the procedural bylaw and the Municipal Act. And that governs not only just how we run the meeting, but also then the business of the council, or sorry, of the committee, the township, and how it's enacted. Parliamentary procedure, points of order and points of procedure not specifically governed by this bylaw shall be decided by the chair in accordance with, as far as reasonably practical, the most current edition of Robert's Rules of Order. So if you are a big nerd like me, you can have the big 700-page Robert's Rules of Order that provides a great deal of detail on procedural matters and how to conduct meetings. You can also have a more abbreviated version, Robert's Rules of Order newly revised in brief, a bit more plain language and easy to understand. And then there's also smaller things you can get that's kind of more of just a quick reference guide, but doesn't provide any context to it. So those, having just those sheets, don't necessarily provide you with a lot of detail. As a committee member, you don't necessarily need Robert's Rule of Order and to know everything inside and out. However, as a chairperson, it is good to understand the basics of it. And also that's what I'm here for, to provide advice when it comes to parliamentary procedures. So the next section in the procedural bylaw is about meeting decorum. And it is the responsibility of every person involved in a meeting, whether they be council, committee, staff, or the general public. You may not speak disrespectfully to or of any person. Use offensive words or unparliamentary language. Speak on any subject other than the subject that you have received approval to address council. So specifically, we're talking about the procedural bylaw. The procedural bylaw requires that any conversation happening here is to stick to that topic, or to follow the rules of procedure, or any decision of the chair. You may not interrupt, speak over, or continue to speak when advised by the mayor, or otherwise disrupt the proceedings of the meeting or the ability of council or staff to conduct the business or to conduct business. So with in-person meetings, that's a lot more obvious, right? And we're talking about where people are, in person and they're shouting at each other or they're being disruptive in council chambers. That can happen virtually as well. And there's members of the public who are watching us virtually. And so they're seeing everything that we do. And we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier with somebody else. I have another screen open and it's providing me with the information I need to be able to conduct this meeting, provide the orientation. But to members of the public at home, they don't know what I'm looking at. For all they know, I could be looking at, emails from my daughter, or I could be looking at, scrolling through Pinterest. So we're, being aware of how we are coming across to the public is just as important as following the letter of the procedure, because that may be perceived by others as we're not paying attention to what other members of council or committees are saying, what staff is saying, what the delegations are saying. So members of the public who are there to address our committee, and as far as they know, you're watching Netflix. So those sorts of optics are very important in our virtual world. Also important in the in-person meetings as well. So we'll get a little bit more detail into this later, but meetings are always open to the public. We are on YouTube. So this means that we could have thousands of people watching us from the comfort of their home right now over YouTube. In person, that means that our doors are open. People are allowed to walk in and observe any proceedings of the meeting that they wish. So the roles and duties, just in general, it is the role and duty of all elected representatives, appointed committee members, so yourselves, and all staff, myself and CAO Chambers, to serve the residents of the township. That is why we are all here. The business of the township shall be conducted in the best interest of the residents as a whole, and not serve the interests of any one individual or group of individuals above the common good with transparency and openness, conducting business that considers open and accessible communication to members of the public. So this is to ensure that anything that is talked about, is informing the decision, and all of that is open to the public so that people are aware of what's going on. To do so, otherwise, again, may cause some scrutiny and some questioning by people. So it's important to always have transparency and openness as top of mind. We talked a little bit about participating electronically before. This is the section that allows us to do so. So this was, of course, came about from the pandemic. The province very quickly put together legislation to allow for members of council and members of committees to meet electronically, and it be counted towards quorum. Prior to the pandemic, if you attended electronically, it was not counted towards quorum. Okay, so regular and special meetings. So what we are having right now is what we call a regular meeting. That means that we have a schedule that has been set. So the fourth Wednesday of every month at 5 o'clock. Right now, virtually, is the regular meeting schedule for this committee. In general, this committee is not going to have special meetings. Hypothetically, it could come up, it does come up in council, as well as for some other committees. So if there is something that is of an urgent matter that has to be addressed by the committee immediately, you cannot just email each other because that's then happening outside of the public purview. Okay, so we need to have these discussions in public. So that's a special meeting. So quorum, as CAO Chambers talked about right before we started, is making sure that we have a majority of committee members in attendance. So more specifically, a majority of members of committee shall be necessary to constitute a quorum unless otherwise permitted under the Act. If no quorum is present 1/2 hour after the time appointed for a meeting, record the names of the people who are present, but then the meeting shall be adjourned until the next date of the meeting or the next meeting date. If during the course of a meeting the quorum is lost, then we will become adjourned. Yes, Kate.
So because I have children and they tend to do unpredictable things sometimes, what is the sort of standard operating procedure for when you are unable to make a meeting, but for like really legitimate reasons?
Oh, so your reasons for not being able to attend a meeting can vary for any person, right? So if you're not able to attend, you notify, in this case, you would notify myself, not just because I'm the clerk, but because I'm the staff representative to this committee. So you would let myself know, and whomever the chair is. They would need to know as well. If you forgot to email the chair, I would let them know. Or if you only email the chair, hopefully the chair will let me know, so we can make sure that we still have quorum. Life happens, sickness happens, all sorts of things happens to all of us. So that's the understanding with quorum, that once you reach the minimum threshold, you can no longer have that meeting. So one of the items in the procedural bylaw that they talk about with quorum, they also talk about that's where it's talking a bit about the mayor or an active mayor. So one of the things that if this committee chooses to do a bit of a review involving the terms of reference, that is one thing that I would suggest, is that we have a co-chair. Because if whomever is the chair is not able to attend, it's important that there is another person elected or decided by the committee to serve as the chair, and ideally not Rick for the meeting. Right? We want to have something in place in the instance of something happening. Notice of meetings. Notice of meeting, basically that means the agenda. The agenda lets people know not only just when and where, but also what business is being discussed. So if we have a member of the public at home who really wants to be a delegation in regards to a specific item and they see that it's coming up on our agenda, this is the official notice to let them know what's going on. And they call me or email me, and I would arrange for them to have a link to the meeting and advise on when they would be speaking to the committee. So canceling meetings, unfortunately, that does happen. For varying reasons, we may need to cancel a meeting, and that is done by the chair working with myself, providing notice to the other members, and then providing notice publicly. The minimum is should be 7 days. Obviously, there are emergency situations, but 7 days notice, and there are certain requirements such as updating the website and on social media. So the next item, closed meetings. As I said, this committee should not be having closed meetings for any real reason. Council can go into close for a myriad of reasons, but not just for any whim that they want. Everything is to be happening in open. So in my role as well, CAO Chambers is part of these discussions as well as to when it is appropriate for council or a committee to meet in closed. Not just because, oh, it might be a controversial topic, or it might be, we would rather just be free to say whatever we want. It has to be for very specific reasons as outlined in the Municipal Act. And just to give you an example of what two of those reasons are, that is probably not going to affect this committee, but is the closest thing that might, would potentially be a security of municipal property. So council has met on those sorts of topics before, as well personal matters about an identifiable individual. So if we go back to the earlier discussion about if a member is to be recommended to council to be removed from the committee, maybe in that situation, it would be appropriate to have a closed meeting, but there would be very, very limited, if any, reasons why this committee would meet in closed. So rules of debate. Again, I said earlier about how this committee, or how committees in general, are informal, but there are still certain observances that should take place. So when asking to speak, you can raise your hand and say, you would say, through you, Chair Middleholtz, through you, Chair whomever, is how that is generally done. Are we expecting you to be perfect? No. I get called Dawn in the middle of a meeting all the time. It happens. It will be really up to the chair as to the level of formality that they would, for lack of a better word, demand. But that is what the procedural bylaw is saying, is that's how discussion should be happening, is through you, Chair Middleholtz, and then state your comments. The chair calls on whoever raises their hand first. The chair may state their position without leaving the chair, but if they want to get into a debate, then they must leave their chair. And again, that's where a co-chair would generally come into play. So in this particular instance, let's say we're talking about the bike event. I, as the chair right now, say, well, I think we should actually be having this from 5 till 8 instead of 1 till 4. That's when I would have to leave the role of chair and appoint somebody else to that position. Members may not communicate to each other or interrupt while other members are speaking, except to raise a point of order. No member shall speak to the same matter or in reply for longer than 10 minutes. Members may ask questions only to obtain information relating to the matter under discussion and must be asked through the chair. Again, going back to the idea of through you, chair, whomever. Members may only speak for a maximum of 5 minutes at a time during debate, unless no other member has indicated they wish to speak. Points of information, order, and privilege. So this is one of those Robert's Rules of Order of rules. If people are not following the proper procedures, if people have been disrespectful, if people are maybe not providing you with the information that you need in order for you to make your decision, these are the three mechanisms you can use during the meeting. So point of information, you would raise your hand to provide greater clarity on a particular matter, usually pertaining to procedural information. A point of order is when you feel that parliamentary procedure or the procedural bylaw has been breached in some way, and then the chair would provide a ruling as to whether or not the breach has occurred. Same with points of privilege. If you feel that you have been disrespected or decorum is not being observed, you can call this for yourself, or you may also call it for somebody else. Another member or a staff person who is not being respected properly or decorum is not being followed. So conduct, I'm just flipping through my pages here, sorry. There we go. Conduct of members in council. So going back again, no members of council shall speak disrespectfully. But this time very specifically, the reigning sovereign, the governor general, the lieutenant governor of any province, or any person administering the government of Canada or this province. You may not use offensive words or unparliamentary language against council or other members of the committee or against township staff. So a lot of these rules are just about being nice to each other. As we said, we're going to disagree on occasion, but do so respectfully. Sticking to the item that is being debated, not to criticize any decision of the committee, except the only time that you can sort of call into question something that has been decided on is what's called a reconsideration, and then members shall obey the rules of the committee, of the procedural bylaw. Yes. Okay. So voting on motions, in general, when we vote on a motion, we raise your hand. Usually what will happen when a motion is put forward is, and when a motion is put forward, the chairperson will ask for a mover and a seconder, and then questions may be asked, debate may occur, and then a vote is taken. And they'll ask who is in favor, they'll ask who is in opposition, and then announce the outcome of the vote. A reconsideration, and it is possible to reconsider. I got out of order on my bullets, I just realized. My apologies, everyone. The reconsideration is when, after any question except postponement has been decided, a member at the same meeting or at subsequent meetings may move for a reconsideration. Such motion must be made in writing, but no discussion of the main question shall be allowed until the motion about the reconsideration has occurred with a, now this is where the committee is different in that it doesn't have to be a 2/3 majority, it's by a majority. And it's by the members that are present. So again, that's probably not going to come up very often in the committee meeting, but it is something that should be aware of. So I'm going to go back to Integrity Commissioner. So the Integrity Commissioner is a appointed person who provides advice and recommendations concerning codes of conduct. There's a code of conduct for council, there's a code of conduct for local board. As I said earlier, local board is just another name for our committees. So there could be, if they feel that there has been a breach of, if a member of the public or any member feels that there's been a breach of the code of conduct, they would contact the integrity commissioner. Depending on the severity and what has transpired, they will decide whether or not a full investigation needs to occur. And respecting the code of conduct, they do not go outside of that purview when being asked to do an inquiry. The only other exception is the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So at the beginning of the meeting, I asked if anybody has disclosure of pecuniary interest, and that is under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So if I voted on the topic, turns out my brother is benefiting financially from it, then I should have excused myself from it, from the discussion, from the vote. If I didn't, I could be brought up for an investigation on that matter, and that is the integrity commissioner, who's not only going to provide advice, but then also provide some level of decision making on that. Whether if somebody on a committee has breached the code of conduct for local boards, the integrity commissioner provides the report to council. It is council who makes decisions with regards to any sort of potential penalty involving the code of conduct. We're going to do more orientation on the code of conduct at a later meeting, but for now, if anybody needs to contact the integrity commissioner with regards to these matters, I'm more than happy to help you get in touch with them. I don't provide advice. That's what that person is for. Okay. So for the procedural bylaw, we do review it with the term of council. There are certain notice requirements that we must observe. It's through my office that we do the review of the procedural bylaw. If council or staff feel that there is something else that needs to be addressed or reviewed in the procedural bylaw, it can come up other than just with the new term of the council. Excuse me. Suspension of the rules. Committees are allowed to suspend procedural bylaw rules. However, it's not something I recommend. The rules should be in place unless in very certain circumstances. There are certain things that cannot be suspended. However, such as the quorum rules that cannot be suspended. Yeah, and then Robert's Rules of Order. So when it comes to procedural matters, there's a hierarchy. We have the Municipal Act, we have procedural bylaw, we have any policies that may govern, such as the terms of reference for this committee, and then it's Robert's Rules of Order. So if none of those earlier governance documents have any particular rules around a particular matter, then you would refer to Robert's Rules of Order. A lower governing document cannot override what a more senior governance document has said. So that is, yeah. So I wanted to just kind of close with a quote from George Rusty. The purpose of procedures is to seek to achieve consensus in an orderly and principled manner. Rules of procedure should be based on this principle, which is what we all try to achieve when we're preparing our procedural bylaw. That's my contact information. If anybody has any questions, you all have it now, but certainly if you have any questions now, I'd be more than happy to address them. Or I can just move on to the terms of reference. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none.
I have my hand up, John.
Oh, you did? I'm so sorry.
Middle Pulse, I apologize.
Yes, Chair Middle. Oh, I like it. I like it when she calls me that. Yes.
Chair Middle. If there are no questions on the procedural items, One of the reasons that I am attending here tonight is just to talk a little bit about the mandate. Being a new set of eyes coming into the township and looking at our committees and how they function. I wanted to come and have a discussion and make sure that we were able to sort of have a very clear mandate, because the mandate that's outlined in the committee is quite broad. And I thought it would be good to have a bit of a visioning exercise tonight. So I'm going to suggest, rather than having Clerk Middleholtz go through the whole presentation on the terms of reference, if you could pull that up, and maybe we could incorporate my discussion on the terms of reference into the orientation, if that would suit the committee in the essence of time. Don?
So everyone seems to be in consensus on that. I'm fine with that. Procedural bylaw stuff, I do tend to go on and on. So sorry if I took more time than anticipated. Councillor Gordick.
Through the chair, I think just to follow up a little bit on that is that because everybody's new, this is sort of a brand new committee, second meeting. The original terms of reference, when Councillor Hallman and I wanted to start this actual committee, part of it came from some of the things that we were seeing in the community. There was some break-ins, there was some graffiti stuff, things like that. But because it BC, before COVID, some of these things, we weren't dealing with it because we had other things to deal with. So even if the terms of reference, if we have a good look at them and sort of see if the focus has changed a little bit, because now we're out of the pandemic and there might be a different opinion from some of the people that are attending and are now forming the committee. So I appreciate having another look-see at that terms of reference. So thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, wonderful. So with the presentation I was going to be doing, I was just going to briefly kind of talk about what are terms of reference, which is a governance policy that establishes the mandate of the committee. We are required to have them, and it augments the procedural bylaw. They are approved by council, and they can be requested for revision. The first item of the terms of reference is the mandate. So I think it would be appropriate then if the CAO Chambers wants to go into that exercise now.
Thanks, Clerk Middleholtz. And if you want to share that presentation, it might guide the discussion. Had you intended to share that?
Well, I was planning to, but in the interest of being able to see everyone's shiny faces and raised hands, it might be more beneficial if I were to reserve sharing the slide deck until after the discussion about the mandate, if that's permissible to the committee.
I was thinking it may guide the discussion actually if we go through
Okay, then.
slides there. If you wouldn't mind going through that. And I'll just tell you next slide.
Oops. I went too far. Okay. There. You would think after 2 years of COVID, I would be more, I would know better how to do the share screen properly. So this was just kind of what I went through really briefly about what is the terms of reference. Yes, establishing the mandate, the structure, the roles, who does what, meetings, the frequency, in some cases, the timing of them, reporting back to council, community engagement, any additional meeting decorum rules that the committee may have over and above what's in the procedural bylaw. And for this particular committee, we've also sort of expanded on the expulsion of members for a committee by council. So as I said, every committee is required to have them. They are a requirement under the procedural bylaw. And as I said, it augments. So it cannot override what the procedural bylaw says, certainly cannot override what the municipal act says, but it can expand on what is already in existence. They are approved by council, but the committee can request a review or revision. So a very specific revision, such as I mentioned earlier, if the committee decides that a co-chair is appropriate, that very specific amendment can be asked for. So next up, I was going to go into structure and appointments. I was not going to touch on scope or mandate at this time. CAO Chambers, did you want to just provide a brief comment on what exists now?
Sure, and if you want, I can just sort of take it from here, and I'll just tell you to advance the slides when I'm ready. So this committee does have within the terms of reference that it can have up to 2 members of council and up to 8 residents. I do like to see a specific number there when we're establishing a committee, because then we know what quorum is. And, you know, if we have vacancies, then we know what we're filling it to, but that's something that we can look at as we evolve. And you can invite delegates to present information to you. They're obviously not part of the committee, but that's what our current structure is. And there may be any number of staff that might attend a meeting as a staff resource to the committee, depending on what your topic is. So I do believe the terms of reference indicates that the fire chief may attend at times, or I'm here tonight. There may be any number of staff that could attend.
It is also very appropriate at times for our municipal law enforcement officers to attend. They may also make a presentation or come to respond to specific questions. We can potentially have agency guests. This is where Waterloo Regional Police would have a more official present here to speak to specific items regarding the police services. And as I said earlier, they must members must be appointed by resolution in a council meeting. And in general, that will happen with a new term of council. So in the fall, there will be an ad placed online as well as in the papers, asking for members to apply to our various committees, including this one.
Next slide, please. So, sorry, I got accent. One of the reasons why we asked for some of the items that were previously discussed at the previous meeting to be revisited is that we have to follow the procedural bylaw in terms of how we properly elect a chair. And as Clerk Middleholtz indicated, I think at your last meeting, the chair was unable to attend, and in some cases it's beneficial then to have a co-chair so that you don't have to go through that procedural matter of figuring out who's going to chair the meeting. And then our staff resource is the Director of Information and Legislative Services. And she would act as the secretary and distribute the agenda, and as you said, work with the chair. Next slide. So I don't believe you've actually set a schedule for the meeting and your future meetings. I think you've talked a little bit about a monthly meeting, perhaps with a bit of a gap. But it may be beneficial to revisit that after we have had the discussion on the terms of reference and sort of developing a bit of an action plan for the coming year. You know, you're starting the committee here in the last year of a term of council, and with a broad mandate. You know, I know you're going to want to achieve some things. So if we could create an action plan that would be achievable within the 1-year timeframe that you have before the end of the election, that would maybe focus the committee a bit better and make you feel like you've achieved something, even though you've only been operating for a short period of time. And for the time being, we will be continuing on Zoom. So council decided on Monday night that they were not ready to return to in-person meetings yet in light of the increased numbers with the pandemic. So we will just keep the committee apprised if and when we are ready to move back to an in-person format. Next slide. And then these, because we have to meet the transparency requirements of the Municipal Act, we do report back to council. We post our minutes publicly, and we would also include the minutes from this committee on our council, in our council packages. And then there is a mandate here to do a quarterly update to council on the progress and activities of this committee. Next. One of the things that you've outlined in your mandate is community engagement. And you're talking about really exploring opportunities to create events. I know one of the things that you discussed at your previous meeting was the bike safety event, which is on the agenda. And you know, some of that I think has created a bit of a challenge for you as a community, as a committee, because there really hasn't been a budget established for this committee, even though that is sort of outlined in the terms of reference. And this is where I'm seeing I guess, a bit of a concern as to what the terms of reference for this committee are in terms of how it aligns with our procedural bylaw. So our procedural bylaw really sets out three different types of committees. We have ad hoc committees, and they're really set up to review a specific matter, and they would report on that and make recommendations to council. There's also advisory committees, and those are established by council to also look at, you know, specific matters, and they make recommendations to council, and then council is the final decision maker. And then there are special purpose committees, and they're really just to also address specific matters that council may assign to it. However, they're usually of a limited term, and they're for a special purpose. They have a starting and an end date and a very clear mandate. So some of my concern is that the goals of this committee really don't fit within any of those that are outlined in the procedural bylaw, and I think that requires some discussion. Some of the activities that you actually have within your scope here, you know, are the developing, encouraging, and promoting activities and education programs, developing, encouraging, and promoting activities for residents of all ages regarding crime prevention, and initiating and facilitating working groups that may be necessary to assist in the development, encouragement, and promotion of safety and crime prevention programs and activities. And then acknowledging the actions and activities of individuals and groups that are actively working towards developing community consensus on appropriate strategies for safety and crime prevention issues. So those are very, very broad. And I'm wondering if we could open it up to the floor for a bit of discussion as to how you think we can sort of create a little bit more clarity around those, what your expectation was for the committee. You know, I know the bike safety event is something that you've undertaken, but looking at the discussion that happened in the last meeting, it touched on a number of different issues. You were looking at, you know, the safety and well-being of individuals in the community in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and there may be some overlap in other initiatives that are happening regionally as well. So I'm wondering if we could just open it to the floor for some discussion at this point on what the vision was for the community or for this committee, and if we can possibly, you know, set some action plans as a result of that.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can more easily see who has their hands raised, if that's permissible to everyone. Okay. So I see Mr. Dunstall.
Hey, first of all, thank you very much, Chair Milholtz and CEO Chambers for a great session. Very informative, very educational. Thank you very much. There's a lot of work that was put into that. Appreciate it. When I joined, I was kind of looking at just summarize it quickly in a 4-step process to come to some kind of a consensus on what the terms crime and safety, community safety and crime prevention actually mean to all of us. And maybe that would be a consolidation of thoughts and ideas of what those are. And then we have a hybrid definition of those two terms so that we have sort of a working platform on where to move from the actual having that definition. We can move from that to the next step, which I would think would be understanding a little bit more about the actual crime statistics in the territory, in the township, the year over year. Is there been a change? I think there has been. And also, is there some way to look at safety, reported safety issues, either through the school board or through the township or through the Board of Trades or anything like that, where we have heard about issues where there have been safety violations or safety issues that have been raised. And I guess from there, I was thinking it would make sense to get community feedback, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that would be some kind of a survey that would be served or distributed through the township website to better understand what the issues are for crime and safety. I know the people on Morningside where I live maybe have a different opinion of what those crime and safety issues are to people that own businesses or to people that live in different settlement areas as well. What I think is a crime and safety issue in New Hamburg may not be so true in St. Agatha. So pulling all that information together and looking at what the definition of the committee is, looking at what we think is, where we're going to get, what the terms of the questions will be for the survey. We should get a lot of feedback, and that should, I think, give us some direction on where the committee should go from there in terms of what recommendations, what asks we make of council, and also, the outreach programs that we have to make with the community to make them as relevant as important as possible. That's what I was thinking would be the direction. So, that's just my general thoughts. I'll shut up.
Thank you, Mr. Dunstall, for your comments and thoughts for the committee to take into consideration. Councillor Cordick.
So through the chair. So for me, when this was first brought up, it was a little bit of feeling that we could do better with communication within the community. So things like helping to do educational components. So while we do have the fire services that help with the changing of the batteries, maybe in conjunction, it could have been something working with changing batteries, and fire alarms and your smoke detectors and things like that. But maybe working with the schools or something with that kind of discussion. So little components of, or even for me, safety with sidewalks in the wintertime, with salting and things, what we can do to maybe help promote a snow buddy system. So the crime part at the beginning was something, I think, because of the safety audits that we had done in the original buildings and sort of highlighting some of the concerns that were in the community at the time. And while some crimes did go up during COVID, others went down. But I felt that it was kind of a bit more on the preventative safety stuff that we could maybe do. Like when we had graffiti, could we maybe have some sort of outreach where we talk to kids about a different outlet? And one of the things I think Councillor Hallman brought up was, could we have a graffiti board for the kids? as opposed to just letting them kind of willy-nilly stroll over the buildings. If we came up with something to help with an art project. So to me, that was sort of preventative crime because we were letting the kids have an art project. So the safety aspect, I think for me, was the preventative part and working with some of the programs that were going on. And those were two of the sort of ideas that where I was coming from. And then the bike safety was another, you know, kind of having our groups come together with support of the township to sort of highlight some of those things that happen within the community. Kids on the roads. We've now got more bike lanes coming from the region that are coming into our regional roads. What can we do to help to identify those? Let kids know and or adults know where those lines are. So that kind of thing. That's where my thoughts were going for with the actual mandates. But yes, they were very broad. But part of it was to get the committee up and running and then have the conversations with the groups when they got on board. But at the time we couldn't get the mandate to start. So there we go.
CAO Chambers, did you want to respond directly to the comments made by Councillor Gordick, or?
I think Councillor Holman was first, and I can follow her.
Okay, Councillor Holman.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman Holtz. CEO Chambers, if you have something, mine will probably take as long as Councillor Gordick. So maybe if you have something specific, I can park mine.
I was just going to make a suggestion after the ideas came forward about how we could sort of hone things. So if you want to put your ideas forward, and then I would make a suggestion.
Okay. So thank you everyone for being here. I think it's with all these faces, I think maybe I can add some clarity. I'm sorry, my allergies are acting up the last couple of days if I sound off. So this motion was really important to me when I brought it to the floor, and I was really thrilled to have unanimous support of my colleagues around the horseshoe. And one of the perspectives that I brought with this, and that was really important to me, was that after there being no women in the council chambers for so many years, when I was there, I was having a lot of experiences with people in the community who didn't feel safe before, who didn't feel safe and didn't feel heard. And it was really interesting to me because we had a lot of similar experiences. There was women who didn't feel safe parking, didn't feel walking, didn't feel safe going from different aspects of the grocery store. I had single Black moms come up to me and say, I'm scared to take my kids to school, and only because it's a white predominant community. I am Indigenous. I'm terrified to be in Baden. And it was constantly hearing these things. In Mannheim, we have a sex trafficking problem. So it's this constant funnel of information of people feeling and sharing when they felt like they had someone that was safe to talk to. So then I had reached out to people who were on the crime prevention through Waterloo Regional Police and kind of hearing their lenses. And then as a mother, connecting with people through the school community. What does safety look like for our kids? How do we encourage people to grow up in this community and feel safe and participate safe? I don't feel that it should always be on the roles of police to do that. I think that this is an opportunity that we can kind of take a burden off of police and do education, and we can get the tools that they provide us, and we can share that knowledge. So that was a big piece for me to do that. So as Councillor Gordick had mentioned, one of the things that we were successful in was doing septet audits, and we had kind of covered what that means. It's kind of the life that Constable Coombs lives in, and it's getting that expert lens of what safety looks like and how can we design communities to make them safer places. So when we came up with the motion and with the mandate that Clerk Middleholtz was part of too, the goal was actually to make it broad, because how do we narrow it from here? We have women's safety issues, we have all of these things. How do we narrow that down? We have, so I felt like getting us going with a broad mandate was actually more productive, because it would give us an opportunity to get our feet wet, to pick something that, depending on the faces that ended up around here, that we could get to the community, show what we do and what we want to, how we want to go from there, and then kind of narrow it down, kind of get more concise from there. So at the last meeting, we had talked about doing a youth safety thing. As a mother, I'm the chair of the New Dundee Public School Council, And one of the things so many parents had shared about there was that our kids have been locked up for 2 years, and some kids have learned to ride a bike on their driveways. They don't know how to use a bell on a sidewalk. They don't know how to look for cars backing out. And then on that, being in health and wellness in this community, I own a health and wellness business, connecting with police through other lenses. As you see, we had an incident just outside of my business the other day where a police officer had to slam on the brakes and back up because there was kids who were just rearing down the sidewalk, excited to go home from school. And I thought, again, here's another opportunity that we need to share this information that these kids who have grown up in a bubble haven't had. And what an easy way for us to kind of launch this. So I hope that kind of summarizes my intent when that first started. And there are so many aspects to this conversation. And I know budget is something that, we're always looking to kind of do. We don't want to duplicate efforts. But I think the issue, and one of the passions of the faces I see here is that I know there's a lot of skills that can come to this conversation. We all have different pieces of passion, and that's why subcommittees can be really great. And why we can, at this group, look at things that are really special to a couple of us and kind of run and bring that back. So I hope that helps clarify some things for everybody, and I look forward to hearing more ideas.
Thank you, Councillor Hallman. CEO Chambers, again, do you want to address these comments now, or would you like, or may I call on Ms. Lang to provide her comment? Do you want to be the last person?
Yeah, you can call on Ms. Lang, and then
Okay.
I can maybe make some suggestions for next steps.
Okay, lovely. Okay, Ms. Lang, if you'd like to address the committee.
Yeah, and this might be the newbie in me, so forgive me. But I was, when we were talking, the issue of narrowing the scope and the focus of the committee was brought up, and the fact that the mandates are broad. My initial question was, why exactly is that a bad thing? Because it does just give us the flexibility to learn within the community what safety means to other people, because what safety means for me and what safety means for Scott and Chris as men in the community are going to be very, very different things. And so, and to people who are disabled and people who are LGBTQ and other marginalized communities, safety is going to mean really different things. And so when we talk about narrowing the scope of the committee, I get a little bit, the term I use is pearl clutchy. I get a little bit concerned because I think that can often limit your ability to create the kind of change that this committee would be designed to create. So that was just my only question, was sort of like, why is that a bad thing? Why would we want to do that?
Through you, Chair Middleholtz, I think I can answer that. As I said, committees of council are typically advisory in nature, and this has been sort of geared to be sort of a doing committee, which does tend to sort of blend into the role of staff versus the role of governing bodies, which this committee is. So, from a staff perspective, if we have a very broad mandate and we don't have budget allocated and we don't have staff resources allocated, that can tend to be quite chaotic in terms of how we can support, the committee. So I'm not necessarily saying that, the mandate, although it's broad, that's a bad thing. But I think in terms of creating an achievable action plan for the year, there should be some sort of visioning that would set sort of a work plan for the year that we can reasonably resource, and also to ensure that, as an example, you're coming forward and asking for budget for the bike safety event. We haven't allocated budget this year. So all of these activities that you're going to be doing, we're going to have to beg, borrow, and steal from other areas of the municipal budget to be able to support that, because it hasn't been really planned for in the year.
Councillor Holman.
Thanks to the chair. So I want to clarify one thing as well, that we had reached out previously to Trisha from the Resource Center to bring another lens of lived experience in the community who sees it every day of that, and also asked for someone from Waterloo Regional Police to also come. I don't know if that's a hat that Chris can wear at the same time, or if there's another resource that would be good. And the one being that 2 years ago, one of the things that was surprising to me was that Wilmot had the worst drinking and driving in the entire region of Waterloo. And so that was kind of like, wow, was just a startling stat for me. And then, but hearing from police officers that was not startling to them and not shocking at all, but it was for me living here. So it was like, if we have Trisha and we have that, it kind of brings that other lens of what they're seeing for community safety. So when we're talking about budget, I don't necessarily see that being a huge, us coming to, knocking on the door of council every couple of months asking for something. I see this as an opportunity for us again to say, do we reach out to other resources like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and say, what resources do you have that we can then on the ground share? We can ask, we can compile, use, there's so many free platforms out there to compile some data and get that word out to, here's who to call to report. Here's who to share that information. For example, our first meeting, we updated the township's website with some good resources of things like that. So I don't necessarily see us knocking on the door, looking for resources all the time. Obviously with this bike one. So I'm not sure it's a fair assessment to say that we're going to be stepping on staff's toes for do, but I see us as, perhaps with this bike event, that there's some passion for youth education, and then we can look at, as I said, like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers and other resources as well that wouldn't be heavy relying on taxation feedback for funds.
Ms. Lang.
Through the chair. Okay. Sorry, my little one has just learned mama, and he likes to yell it at my office door. Sorry.
Quite all right.
So the one question I had is, I guess addressing the budget point, is that creating an annual action plan is, I think it's a good starting point. But my concern is that if we create something like an annual action plan, it wouldn't necessarily allow us to be as nimble in responding to the needs of the community as we might need to be, especially when you're talking about what I would consider more of a hot button issue around like crime and safety prevention and all of those things. So yeah, I think this is a pretty resourceful group of people. And I don't think we're necessarily always going to be knocking down council's door for money. I think we are sort of more the crowdsourcing type of folks, like who can we tap in the community who might have an interest or a passion in this particular event, and crowdsourcing information and funds is something that I think we'd all be willing to do. And I wouldn't want to sacrifice the nimbleness of the committee and being able to address concerns of the community by putting a sort of etched in stone plan together for a year.
Thank you. CAO Chambers.
I think one of the things that Mr. Dunstall raised, and it may be a good starting point, is doing some of the research, right? Getting statistics, and that might guide what your initial work should be in terms of crime. There are other initiatives going on within the region as well, with the region taking on the community safety and well-being planning, which is a requirement under the Policing Act. So municipalities are required to do community safety and well-being plans. And I believe the Regional Council just adopted the framework for that in January of this year. So there may be an opportunity to receive a presentation from Connie McDonald about the community safety and well-being plan and the work and what was heard through the engagement there that may inform some activities. So, as Mr. Dunstall indicated, understanding crime statistics, things like that, could help you to focus your efforts initially as well.
Councillor Gordick.
I'm going to let Mr. Coombs go because I wanted to hear what he had to say from a policing perspective first, and then I'll just come back because I just have a quick little comment with regards to both what Ms. Chambers and Ms. Lang said. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Coombs. Are you able to unmute?
Sorry
There
about that.
we go.
My computer was frozen there.
No worries, no worries. Thank you.
I agree with a lot of the comments. I think the first thing before we look at narrowing our focus is understanding what's important to the community, and then I agree we do need to have a target, but again at the same time also have the agility that Ms. Lang spoke about. But the key thing from my perspective would be understanding what the community we're trying to help serve deems to be important. And again, I look at things from different lenses at times and observations within the community as well. So I find it interesting to get perspective from the other side, so to speak, and see what people are finding to be concerns in our area.
Councillor Gordick.
Through the chair. So first point was to speak to what Ms. Chambers spoke about with regards to budget. So I did bring up, for example, like a graffiti wall. So that could cost something if we didn't have a space, and it could even be annually our staff make up a 20-foot by 8-foot wall that can come down every year or get whitewashed, and then the kids have a place. So there could be a cost and a staff implication for that to kind of have an artistic outlay. So granted, very fair for a comment, because that would be an ask that we would maybe do. But that to me is something that is part of the preventative for the safety and preventative of crime for some of the students. And it could be, sorry, I shouldn't say students, but anybody who's graffiti, because it couldn't just be kids. But it could be part and parcel of where we have our skate park, and that it could be like an outlet for the people that are going there. And I would expect, I would ask maybe if Mr. Coombs had some comments on that when we get to that conversation, because of his expertise. And that, would that be a preventative measure? Is it not, have they tried it before? And could that be something we would look at? But yes, something more rural based, as Councillor Hallman mentioned, our D and I stats are higher than what I thought they would be in the city. When we were doing our insurance pool conversation 2 years ago, we found out that we have higher rates. So going back to Councillor Hallman, would it be something that we could work with MAD? And it's not necessarily involving staff, but it could be something, it could be involving staff with regards to using our LED boards to sort of help promote some of the initiatives that MAD does, or even our Twitter account. So there could be some staff input, yes, for sure, for that. But if they have a national or annual program, maybe we look at their calendars and do that kind of thing. So the research part of it, yes, for sure. And working with those kind of organizations to kind of maybe just add an extra layer of education, having the Wilmot Township tweet out something that MAD does, and just be aware that that's part of a campaign that they do whenever it is, if it's an annual thing, spring or winter, Christmas time. Again, Mr. Coombs, I'm assuming, might know some of that data because of what policing initiatives there are with the RIDE programs and things like that. So fair point, staffing is required. But I guess I shouldn't say small staffing requirements, because it does take time for someone to prepare the tweets. It does take time for someone to prepare the Facebook posts. and to do them so that they have meaningful impact. So I understand that part. But maybe that's where we do some of the research that Mr. Dunstall said and find out where maybe we pick 3 things for this year, because we don't have a lot of time. We probably will not have a meeting in July and August, which goes part and parcel with council. So it doesn't leave us a lot. So if we focus on maybe 3 things, like the bike safety, a MAD program, and something else, that might help us to focus, and then come back after we do some more research to sort of see how we progress the community safety initiative. For me, it was all about the engagement, and I'm sure that that's what everybody here is for. It's we don't want crime here, so what can we do to help that we stop it, right? And even the smaller things, like I said, the Snow Buddy program, Kitchener-Waterloo seems to have one, and I believe we have one, but it's not promoted well enough, I think, to sort of help people in the community. Places like Morningside, where there's more of an elderly community, what is there to help with them for their safety aspects, for being safe on their sidewalks and their road and their laneways during the winter months. So, and what can we do to help? Whether, obviously we don't want staff to do that, that's not their job, but is there some sort of mechanism in place that we can sort of help promote Morningside to have some of those initiatives to help them? So that's my part and parcel.
Thank you. I'm not going to provide an awful lot of comment. I am a staff person here, and in some of those cases, it is staff's job, and for us to be providing that education as the subject matter expert is sort of the key to what it is that we need to do. So having the identification of the key issues and providing that information to staff for us to do our jobs in those places as needed. I'm speaking, of course, from bylaw perspective, which is under the Office of the Clerk, Informational Legislative Services. So there are some times where it is the responsibility of staff. So I just wanted to put that out there to help in the facilitation of the conversation. I think it's a great conversation. Councillor Holman.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just looking at my notes that I made from the first meeting. And we talked about one of the main things that was identified in Wilmot Township was many people being decade rural people, and we're not locking their doors and getting a more sense of over safety than necessary. And then Waterloo Regional Police commenting that really often locking it really is a significant amount of that. And one of the things that we kind of came to consensus at was the first meeting was that was something really impactful locally and really does help with taking off burden of Waterloo Regional Police responding to calls that really could have been stopped by people locking their front door, locking their garage, locking their sheds, and locking their vehicles. So, that was one of the things that we had discussed that we kind of all agreed about. And as wearing the elected official hat and staff saying, we did hear a lot about that specifically in Baden as well. So maybe I put that out there that we could maybe be one of our fall exercises leading into kind of the Christmas holiday season. Seems to be an uptick at that time of year, is really working on some brand messaging and encouraging the Lock It or Lose It campaign and really kind of push that out through social media, through the municipality. And and also rurally, because we have a significant amount of that happening out in my neck of the woods too, where people are going into barns, stealing fuel with the fuel prices, and kind of really getting that message out there. So I would kind of throw that as being one of our key elements for the fall that we hear throughout the municipality.
Through the chair. I'm sure that the township has somebody employed to do things like social media content creation and those things. So it's not that I would want to take away from that person, but I'm sure they have enough to do. But I'm wondering if there's a place for, professionally, I am a content creator, and so writing social posts and things like that is something that I do in my sleep practically. So when we're talking about creating initiatives from this committee that would need to be sort of administered by staff at the, I want to say city, but I know that's not right, township.
You are a township, yes.
Oh God, my brain at this time of day is no good. But yeah, like, is it a thing where we could create some of that content ourselves as a committee, and then provide it to your social folks to schedule and obviously approve and all of those things, and then schedule, but just to make the load a little lighter for staff in terms of the things that we're coming up with. Is that a thing, or would I be stepping all over somebody's turf?
CAO Chambers to respond to that.
Through you, Chair Middleholtz. Certainly capacity is an issue for us right now. We are a very busy township, and I think we have about 115 capital projects on our plate to manage this year, in addition to all of our major operational activities that we do. So we have just revamped our communications portfolio, and we have one person on board and a few others kind of helping as a corner of the desk activity. So certainly, if there were communications that this committee wanted to help develop, we would obviously have to approve them to ensure that they complied with our own township policies and all of that. But it would be helpful if you could assist with content creation, for sure. And I just want to reiterate that part of my request to kind of narrow the focus too is that we want to be able to support you as best we can as a committee, and I want to be really open and honest about, because this is very new and we do have a lot on our plate this year. We're sort of doing a bit of a rebuilding year, I will call it. It would be helpful for us as staff to have a better understanding of what the mandate, what the activities of the committee are. I fully appreciate your comments about being nimble and responding to community safety issues as they are arising within the community. But it would just be helpful for us to have sort of a greater idea of what the focus is and how we can support it.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, with the motion that we have prepared in the package this evening, if we can perhaps add a little bit to it that adds further clarification to council, that in the next budget process that our committee is asking for an ongoing, maybe like a $500 purse or $800 purse, just to get us a year to be able to host events and that kind of thing. And obviously we'd have to ask for it, but just if that can be budgeted on a regular basis, and then council has time to ask questions and see if that's something they support, with us requesting to be nimble. I'm just wondering if CEO Chambers can comment on that.
Okay. CEO Chambers.
Thank you. I think it is actually set out in the terms of reference that you would work through your staff liaison to establish that budget. So I don't think there's necessarily a requirement to add to the motion, but I will also, I don't want Ms. Middleholtz's clerk dander to be getting up here. We're still sort of in the orientation part of the meeting. And so, perhaps if we move into any decision making, we should go ahead and formally elect our chair and undertake the business after that. But I appreciate
yes, CAO Chambers does enjoy poking fun at the clerk and her sometimes rigidity around rules. It's my job. So, and just on a side note, it is very odd being clerk, secretary, and chair all at the same time. It's quite interesting. So I'm going to, I think this was a very good conversation, and I hope everyone feels that they had an opportunity to comment and share. Before we move on, does anyone have anything else they wish to add at this time on this subject? Okay. Oh, Councilor Gordick.
Through the chair. So I know that we're going to be voting on the chair, and this could be then the conversation, but I wanted to sort of throw it out there as part and parcel because of, we are trying to be fluid. And as I said, we probably don't have very many meetings. We'll have one in May, June, and then September. And then I'm not quite sure what happens during the election process, how those things work. And again, we can have a different conversation because we're already over time. But I'm just wondering if we, once we pick the chair, and I'm not trying to overtake the meeting, I'm just sort of throwing it out there, is that maybe, as we suggested, as we look at two kind of topics to sort of work with, to at least kind of close that mandate a little bit, and then ask for how we figure out the conversation, how we figure out to get the research, as Mr. Dunstall said, where do we go and how do we get the research to kind of come back with. But maybe if we pick the lock it and lose it as sort of a mandate, part and parcel of something we work with, and then the bike safety, of course, and then one other third sort of thing. So we have something that we can show to ourselves as a committee that we're working towards. And we've picked 3 goals within that. But again, I'm not trying to overrun the meeting. I'm just sort of wondering if we have that conversation, if we can go back to that and maybe have something to finalize for the end of the day.
So thank you, Councillor Gordick. So I would say at this point, we do have our agenda set as to what it is that we're discussing tonight. I'm not going to speak for CAO Chambers. I think this conversation has been great. We've received a lot of information for contemplation, for decision. Nothing is going to. I would suggest that we don't add anything to tonight's meeting. But that these decisions of the group as to what will be sort of, as you say, maybe 3 topics to focus on for the remainder of the year. As the staff person for this group, it would involve me doing some initial looking at what would be involved in that, what could be involved in that, coming back to the group and saying this is what we found, this is what it would involve, that sort of thing. What a survey might look like to garner the information that this group wants. But I will ask CA Chambers, I'm very sorry to be putting you on the spot, though, to be asking how you felt the potential revision of the mandate may go. If that is something that would be worked on with yourself and me, or if that's something that you feel further workshopping is required. Councillor Cordick, I think you have a hand up, but I would ask for Ms. Chambers or CAO Chambers.
This would be just a quick follow-up to your comment, the chair.
Yes.
When you mentioned the survey, would that be, I'm just wanting for clarification, that's why I'm asking for the follow-up. So the survey that you mentioned, would that be something that would come to council as a report for us to approve so that it would go out to the general public?
No. Oh, oops, sorry. That was pretty glib. My apologies. Not my intention. So in general, when this is staff, this is what staff does. We develop these surveys. We come up with information. In general, with an advisory committee, right? They provide input, which we received this evening, as to what a survey would look like. Staff usually develops it. We don't usually go back necessarily to either the committee or council, because that is what staff does. That is part of our job. CAO Chambers may have a different view on this, but that is what I am accustomed to. If there's a different outlook as to how that would go, I would ask her to comment maybe on that now if she's prepared.
Well, I think it may be a good idea. I would make a suggestion that you sort of consolidate some of your ideas in advance of the next meeting and have a bit of a visioning exercise in the next meeting and maybe some prioritization, because I think there's been quite a few issues that have been raised this evening, and kind of set at least your initial action plan. And I don't know if you think that perhaps that is even just undertaking some research and garnering some statistics early on and determining what activities you're going to focus on primarily based on needs. So, that may be a subsequent meeting agenda to bring those ideas forward. And you could put your ideas forward to Clerk Middleholtz, and she could compile them in advance for a report so that you could review and be prepared to discuss and prioritize them.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So when following this meeting, I will send out a subsequent email requesting this sort of information with the deadline that is required for me to be able to provide ample notice, not only for the agenda, but for the report, and so that the public is going to see this as well. So which will be our processes going forward, is that these will be advertised on the Township website approximately 1 week in advance of the meeting. Okay, so we'll provide that information. So we kind of went over Decorum before. I'm not going to get back into that now on terms of reference. I don't believe that. We've had a very respectful discussion this evening, which is wonderful. I do want to point out, however, that they appointed this committee obviously is not to provide any criticism of any enforcement. Let me share my screen, sorry. Of any enforcement related activities of Waterloo Regional Police, other agencies, or Township bylaw. Continued breach of decorum may result in expulsion. Criminal activity or bylaw infractions are not the mandate of the committee. Anybody who wishes to report anything of that nature will need to be referred to the proper agency. Okay, as I said, expulsion of the mayor of the member is a potential in the terms of reference as described here. So the committee may make a recommendation to council for an expulsion, contravention of the Municipal Act, contravention of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, this big long one right here, contravention of the Prevention of Offences Act, contravention of the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, disruption of the work of the committee, other legal issues. Obviously, the nature of this committee, does talk about crime prevention, community safety. So it's important for the committee's members to have to reflect on that. Continued contravention of the code of conduct or the terms of reference, or that we are absent from more than 3 meetings per year. So I'm just going to go back to something that was said by a member earlier. We have lives, we have things that happen. People are going to miss meetings, and it's perfectly acceptable. However, if something comes up in a meeting, you were at the meeting. If something happens, we have to understand that those things are going to happen. However, if somebody is absent for 3 or more meetings per year, then it's up to the committee to determine whether or not that the member is interested in continuing to be an active member. And then evaluation of the terms of reference, revisited at the request of council, this committee or staff, and shall be reviewed with the new term of council / committee. So it would be happening around this time anyways. So this is certainly appropriate. And I think that's my contact information again. Okay. So moving on, does anybody have any questions on that last little bit? Okay. So our next item then is a committee chair election. So let me a moment. So I have a process that will be followed for the election of the chair. So first of all, I would open the floor to nominations. I'm just going to go through it and then we'll do it. Open the floor to nominations. It is recommended that the chair be a citizen representative. You may nominate yourself, and if somebody nominates you, you have the right to decline it. If there's more than one name forward, we will have an election. I would recommend that the chairs just say a brief few words of why they feel they would be a good presiding officer. Unfortunately, because we're municipal government, we don't have the polling function in Zoom, which would have been preferred, but we don't have that. So I will be sending out an email to everyone that's going to have voting buttons on it, and you reply back to me. Only I'm using blind copy, so it will only come back to me anyways when you reply. The majority of votes will indicate who the presiding officer or chair is, and the votes will be kept in secret. If there is only one nomination, then the chair is acclaimed. And then following the meeting, I will be in contact with the chair to talk about the roles and responsibilities of being a presiding officer. Okay, so let's start it off by opening up the floor to nominations or self-nomination. Councillor Holman.
I would like to nominate Chris.
Mr. Coombs, do you accept the nomination?
The only concern I have is just availability and the fairness to the rest of the members, just due to the nature of my business and rotating shifts and things. That would be my only concern point.
Okay, so there is the option that council or that the committee may elect a co-chair, which may provide some of that, which we would be opening up for revision, revising the terms of reference at our next meeting. Councilor Holman, do you continue to have your hand up, or did you not put it down by mistake?
Thank you, through the chair. I put it up again because I would like to nominate Kate as the co-chair.
So right now, the terms of reference don't really have a co-chair provision. So technically that, what did CAO Chambers say? The clerk dander being up. So technically a co-chair at this point in time would not be something that we would be able to contemplate. My apologies, it's certainly not a reflection on this line at all. So we need, so if the nomination, if Mr. Coons is the only one that comes forward, it's acclaimed, and then we can concern ourselves with co-chair at the next meeting. Ms. Lang.
Sorry. So what you're saying is that we can't talk about the whole co-chair thing at this meeting because it goes beyond the scope of this meeting. But if Mr. Coombs takes the chair, then he can talk about electing a co-chair at the next one?
So no, what it would be is that at this meeting in particular, we're not going to elect a co-chair. By all means, it sounds like there is, from what I'm gathering here, it sounds like there may be some interest from the committee in adding that to the terms of reference as an amendment. We can certainly have that put forward to council for adoption. It's just that we wouldn't be able to adopt, we wouldn't be able to elect a co-chair. And Mr. Coombs, if he is the chair, he does not elect or appoint a co-chair. It would probably be the committee as a whole that would go through an election process.
Okay, I don't know if this is the done thing. I don't know if I'm breaking a rule here, so like just forgive me. But I had similar concerns to Mr. Coombs about this whole chair business, in that I was just concerned about my ability to like do this all by myself. So if I can like say I would be open to the whole co-chair business, but I don't want to take this on all by myself, I would like to just put that out there as a thing.
So I have had some committee experience where we've had chairs and co-chairs where they very much rely on each other. And so that Mr. Coombs, for example, would provide you with his schedule for the fourth Wednesday of the month and let you know in advance when he's available. And we would work that way. CAO Chambers, I'm not sure if you want to speak now or if I should be going to Councillor Holman first.
Sorry, Councillor Holman, I didn't I would just suggest that for the time being, since it's not provided for in the terms of reference, if you can't show up to a meeting, you would just have to appoint a chair by resolution at the beginning of the meeting. And at the earliest convenience, we can take it back to council and get the terms of reference modified to allow for a co-chair.
Thank you very much, CEO Chambers. Councillor Holman.
Thank you through the chair. I just didn't want to be rude. I have to go chair a meeting at 7 o'clock. So if I disappear, I just wanted to give you all a heads up as to why I've disappeared into the abyss. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Holman. So at this point in time, we have one nomination for chair. Are there any other nominations at this time? As I said, you are available. You are able to nominate yourself. Seeing none, congratulations, Mr. Coons. Do you prefer to be called Mr. Coons or Officer Coons in this setting?
Mr. Coombs is fine.
Okay, I just wanted to check. Okay,
No,
thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. So that business is concluded. Thank you very much, and I will be in contact about chairing roles and responsibilities. So that brings us on to the bike safety event. So I just wanted to formalize the decision of this committee, which is how we would be doing things going forward. Just like council, committee business is agreed upon by resolution. Okay, so that is what we would be doing this evening. So the bike safety event conversations have occurred already to do much of the organizing. So what we're talking about this evening would be more of just a ratification of what has already happened, but then also providing some additional direction back to staff with regards to, direction as well as information back to staff to be able to finalize, in particular, the insurance piece. So what we will be talking about is a bike safety event happening at the Wilmot Recreation Complex on the arena floor on May 29th, 2022 from 1 to 4 p.m. The committee, it's been suggested as to whether or not the committee would like to ask council to waive the rental fees, simply because when we have a township facility, there is the expectation of fees being paid, and if they're not being paid, we need to sort of have that approved at a council level or reallocated in the budget to an appropriate location. And then there's also the staffing needs for social media and a website to advertise it, and for myself in particular to incorporate the required insurance into the budget of the Information Legislative Services Department. So to begin, I would like to, the motion is read that the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Engagement Committee endorses the establishment of a bike safety event at the Wilmot Recreation Complex arena floor on May 29, 2022 from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock p.m. That a request be forwarded to council for the waiving of rental fees associated with the event, and further that township staff be requested to advertise the event on township social media and the township website, and incorporate insurance costs for the event into the Information and Legislative Services Department budget. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Holman, seconded by Ms. Lang. For discussion on this, before we move to vote, there is information that is required for us to obtain an insurance quote. So I will open it up to the floor for the following questions. How many participants are expected, and what are the age groups of the expected participants? How many supervisors and trainers will be on site? Confirmation that helmets will be worn by all participants, and that waivers are signed by participants or participants' parents or guardians. And I see Councillor Hallman had her hand up first. Councillor Hallman?
Thanks for the chair. So this was some notes that I had been taking, anticipating this. So I'm just going to look at my screen here. Okay, so based on events like this that have happened throughout the community in the past and the interest based on just talking to other school councils, we're anticipating between 30 and 60 children.
Mm-hmm.
And the interest seems to be for youth age 12 and under. The youngest being 4 at JK level. And then when it comes to the waivers, looking at some through social media platforms, is this one that the insurance company would provide something, or is it something that we could write up and give for staff review?
Based on the information I've been provided, that it was the indication that we would be providing some sort of a waiver. There may be some samples available. I don't believe that the insurance company we engaged has been asked that question, but it is certainly something that that can be found if directed.
And then
I would say my apologies. I would say certainly an Optimist Club in the area is going to have a similar waiver as they host events like this. Follow up, Councillor Hallman?
just going to add that for people on site, I was going to ask if we would be able to expect that the volunteers of this committee would be available on site that day.
Okay. So if the members of the committee, as we said, it's May 29th from 1 till 4. By raise of hands, do you feel you can commit to that at this time? Okay, that's lovely. Okay. So that was okay. Ms. Lang.
Sorry, through the chair. I actually just came across this morning on Twitter that the Waterloo North Optimist Club is having a bike rodeo, bike safety event the day prior on the 28th. And they are similarly doing a bike rodeo for ages 5 to 12. They have a sponsor of some sort. They're just telling people to bring their own bike and helmet, just show up, no need to register, and that they have information from trying to read at the same time, it's a bad time. Information from Cycling into the Future, training tomorrow's cyclists today will be available. And they obviously have a sponsor of some sort because they're giving away a free bike, but they would theoretically then also have a waiver that I'm assuming that they were using for that event. So we could probably scoff that if we needed to.
Mm-hmm. So I'm uncertain if any member of the committee has connections with a local Optimist Club. Certainly I can reach out if necessary. Mr. Dunstall?
Yeah, I'm a member.
Okay, do you feel that you'd be able to make that connection to find what waivers are used at bike rodeos by the Optimists?
Sure. Yep.
Wonderful. Wonderful. They're great events. I've attended them myself as a member of the Optimists at one point. Okay, and then the confirmation of the helmets, that is part of the advertising, and if it is the will of the committee, any advertising to this effect would include participants without a helmet will not be permitted to participate. Is that, I feel that's appropriate as others do. Okay, Councillor Hallman.
Thank you through the chair. Kate, actually through you to Kate, do you think that you could maybe help us with the getting that infographic? We use Facebook, Twitter, and the Township's website to get some details with that. to create some imaging. Do you have time on your schedule before the end of May, or is this, if not, I just didn't want to, I know you had offered, so I didn't want to put it out there if you have time in your schedule.
Do I have to raise my hand to reply?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a real big rule follower. I follow the rules if you tell me what to do. I'm sorry. Okay. In terms of yeah, I mean, I guess yes is the short term. I could probably create a graphic like that. Do we as a township have access to like a clip art file things, free graphic things, pictures that I can use for social purposes, or is it just like I'm on my own?
So what I would do is connect with the members of the communications team on behalf of the committee, and just raise that as a question and see what they're able to provide to that effect. I don't want to speak for them, and so I would rather do that, and then I can provide the information to Ms. Lang, if that's permissible.
Yep. Also, I'm a timeline kind of person. I have to have a deadline or it will not occur. So if somebody could tell me when I need to have these done and dusted by to give to said communications people to sprinkle throughout the internet, that would be excellent.
Let me connect with them and get back to you as well. Of course, we want to have ample time to provide this information out to the public, and so we'll see how we can proceed with that. Okay, but as I said, I don't want to speak for them, so I'd rather just connect with them tomorrow and get back to you. All right. Okay. And Councilor Hummon, is your hand newly up or still up?
It's up again before I run away. Because I was quickly trying to Google frantically our township use logo that we had done with Obs and Mugs a while ago, and I can't find it in a scramble. Can you remind
what logo?
The township logo and for use of it? I remember we passed criteria, and there's been. So is that something that that Kate can have permission to put on that infographic? Or I don't remember what the terms of use for the logo were. I was trying to quickly find it on our website, but anyway, maybe that could be shared with her as well.
Once again, I would rather not take that in turn and provide incorrect information. So that is something I'll either connect with the communications team to provide that information, or I can provide that information to Ms. Lang directly. I just need to check with them because I don't like stuff on my taste. Okay. All right, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So what we need to do now, we had a mover and a seconder. So by raise of hands, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. So finally, we've had a very long, it's Councilor Gordon?
Through the chair, I think Benita has a question. She put her hand up. No, you're good? I saw you put your hand up a couple of times. Just want to make sure we didn't miss you.
I was just quick on the draw. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, so the last item of any meeting is it's an adjournment that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the chair. If I could have a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Mr. Coons, seconded by Ms. Lang. All in favor? Excellent. Okay, I am very happy to have Mr. Coons take over the chairing role of the next meeting. It's all about comfort level. Thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely evening.